Hello again, rail fans. You know, we've all visited small town museums that used to be train stations. They look different from place to place, but they all have the freight doors, the waiting room, the bay window where the operator sat. These little stations were also train order offices, places where trains picked up their orders along the way. And most had the signal mast with the semaphore blades on it outside that the operator inside could control. That was the train order signal. Railroader slang is train order boards. They were everywhere from the 1800s right up through the 1980s. Now, we're going to chase some modern trains in this episode, but let's take just a minute first to explain what happened to the old train order boards, the old train order signals. We'll pay a visit to a very well-preserved Seaboard Airline Railroad station and train order office at a museum in Largo, Florida. The Sulphur Springs Depot was moved and beautifully preserved at Largo's Heritage Village Park in Pinellas County. Most notably for this video, they saved the old train order boards. Inside, the operator's bay window desk is preserved with surprising accuracy, maybe with a little less dust and clutter. This is where train orders came in from the dispatcher via company telephone or Morse code telegraph. The operator would then type them up using carbon paper to make multiple copies at once, because the conductor, engineman, and flagman were each required to have a copy. The desk has the Morse code key and the sounder receiver, complete with the empty Prince Albert tobacco can up against the sounder. This would help amplify the Morse code clicks to make them easier to hear. When the operator had finished typing up the orders, he would then set the train order signal to the indication necessary, in many cases at a 45-degree angle, to indicate to the train, "Prepare to grab some orders." The train order signal was connected to the office below by a set of long rods coming down the mast and then connected to a set of handles that went through the wall inside the office to where the operator could change the signal from his desk or at least from inside the office. Then the operator would stand out on the platform next to the track with the orders folded into a train order fork like these, holding that fork high enough for the crew to grab the papers. Now, train orders are just what the name implies, orders or instructions for the train crew. Pick up cars here, drop cars there, take the siding ahead at such and such, and wait indefinitely for train number such, and don't go any farther until you hear more orders. My friend Gordon Deason gave me some old Atlanta and West Point train orders on this very thin paper used in those days. Remarkable. They still have the folds from being stuffed into the elastic string of the train order fork. This one is from March 6, 1970. The first one is to conductor and engineer at Opelika, Alabama. And the instructions are reduce speed to 20 miles per hour at milepost 26 3/4 and look out for crane loading truck. Just incredibly thin paper. My thanks also to friend of the channel Patrick Cooney from Leroy, Illinois, for these old Seaboard Coastline train orders from right here in Tampa. Patrick, I really appreciate these. For a long time, the timetable and train order system was the only way for dispatchers and operations people to communicate with trains out there on the road. And it worked very well for over 100 years.
All right, EC1 number is 99066.
Today, two-way voice and telemetry radio keeps trains and operations managers in communication all the time. At least that's what I'm hoping for on this February Saturday morning. Coming into Ocala on I-75, the sky is looking pretty gray, but the forecast people say it's clearing. I hope they're right. And they were. By 9:15, it was nearly a clear blue sky as I passed Campville. When I got to Baldwin, I checked out the railroad crossing where a couple of years ago the diamonds had been pulled out on the ex-Seaboard Tallahassee main line, now the Florida Gulf and Atlantic to Pensacola. But the optional route the diamonds provided must have been necessary because here in February 2025, both diamonds are back at the crossing Like in so many places where Class 1 railroads cross short lines, the diamonds are low-speed flange bearing designs that minimize the slamming and hammering that high-speed diamonds make. Baldwin is a true four-way intersection with the ex-Seaboard S-Line to the south, now the primary CSX route into Central and South Florida, the SP line leading west to Tallahassee and Pensacola, the double-tracked SM line going north to Callahan to join with the A line, and the SP line headed eastward to Jacksonville's Duval Ramp, Beaver Street, Moncrief Yard, and the FEC connection at Riverside. I moved up to the US 90 crossing about 1,000 feet north of the diamond. M442 was just coming out of the yard, currently doing work here, picking up cars that it will haul to Waycross. This is a prime example of CSX's block-swapping philosophy for its road freights. M442 is a regular freight train out of Tampa that runs to Waycross, Georgia. In a few minutes, I learned he wasn't yet leaving. He was still picking up cars, and with a long train like 442 is today, that meant stopping on the US 90 crossing. Down on the end of the train, 3/4 of a mile back there, the conductor is lining yard switches so that 442 can back down into another track where the cars to be picked up await. Each of these maneuvers takes a couple of minutes, keeping traffic way up here on US 90 at a full stop. There is a newly built bypass that flies over both railroad tracks at Baldwin, allowing drivers on US 90 and 301 to get around it all. 22 minutes into this operation, another train enters the Baldwin plant. I must have missed him calling signals as he approached the junction, and with no train horns at Baldwin crossings now, he sneaked up on me. Note the blue boxcar right behind the engines. He's I-03201, daily fast intermodal coming out of Duval Ramp in Jacksonville and headed to Curtis Bay Yard in Baltimore. Along the way, he stops in Florence, South Carolina to pick up cars. The double tracking of this territory here made moves like this one possible. For more than a year, dispatchers have been routing northbound intermodals out of Duval's south end, sending them west on the Tallahassee line to out here at Baldwin and around the corner back northward to Callahan and onto the A line to Savannah and the northeast. This avoids a choke point on the north end of Duval Yard, where the CSX lead crosses Norfolk Southern's Valdosta, Maine. It's NS's only way in and out of Jacksonville. Network fluidity. That blue boxcar on the head of I-032 was one of CSX's ATACs, Autonomous Track Assessment Car. CSX has 8 of these non-revenue boxcars that have been modified with electronics to measure track gauge, warp, alignment, and profile. They create a spectacular show at night with laser lights underneath that shine downward on the track. "34 minutes after they first pulled across here, M44201 is ready to depart, and away we go. All along the CSX main lines in Florida, there are piles of new cross ties waiting for the tie gangs to install them. I hope to catch that operation somewhere before they finish in Florida this winter. On M442, empty scrap and metal gondolas bring up the rear. Central and South Florida generate a huge amount of scrap metal business, but these are going north empty. For the casual observer, it's hard to know why. It's now nearly 1 p.m. and I'm 8 hours past breakfast. I made a run into White House and Gator's Barbecue, where I've never had the barbecue, only the seafood. Today it was the 3-item lunch combo, shrimp, fish, and devil crab. With 2 sides and iced tea, it was $17.76. I ate half of it in the parking lot and the handheld stuff out on the road. I was headed back to Baldwin and then north on US 301 toward Crawford. It's an easy place to find because the railroad overpass is literally the only hill on 20 miles of this highway. NS has a big radio relay tower here at Crawford, where the CSX Callahan sub crosses the Norfolk Southern's Valdosta to Jacksonville line. It seems like there are always track appliances around here, too, like this old diamond in a pond of rainwater, some old cross ties in the middle, and another old diamond on the other end of the pond. But no trains here right now, so I moved 4 miles up the road to Callahan. Other rail fans were already there. They were all stalking a CSX Heritage engine to be on train IO 2531. Engine 1871 is CSX's tip of the hat to its Atlantic coastline heritage, arguably one of CSX's grandparents. Callahan did not disappoint this mid-Saturday afternoon. Up first was I-13731, piggyback service out of Pinoca Yard in Charlotte for Moncrief, Jacksonville. Along its way, I-137 works Dillon, Charleston, and East Savannah. This is a giant I-137 today and nearly all double stacks. And here's something I don't think I've ever seen on a CSX intermodal: an empty container chassis riding piggyback on a spine car. I never did see the end of 137 because another intermodal showed up off the Callahan sub and laying on its horn, thank goodness. It's I-026 coming out of Duval Ramp and bound for Bedford Park, Illinois. These are loaded World Direct containers that came out of Port Manatee at Tampa. I-026 also has a CSX ATAC car trailing the locomotives. This is one of CSX's big afternoon trains. UPS trailers riding piggyback on spine cars. There is lots of UPS on this train. There's something about the symmetry of a long string of double-stack containers. It's very impressive. To me, anyway. I didn't get the length or axle count of I-02601, but he had to be a monster, with a distributed power engine at mid-train and a whole lot of trains still back there. "12 minutes later, the show rolled on at Callahan. X60301. This was an extra train, makeup service to get customers back on schedule. 603 is regular freight service originating at Rice Yard in Waycross and delivering to Winston Yard in Lakeland. This is a heavy train with lots of raw materials and basic industrial ingredients: grain, chemicals, minerals, and boxcars full of merchandise and industry commodities. Brand new 3-bay open-top hoppers with some kind of pulverized rock. 603 is a classic general freight train. As the sun sank lower in the winter sky, Dale Rockwell, retired CSX dispatcher and one of the rail fans in our crowd, decided that Callahan would no longer work for shooting the IO 2531, the train with the Coastline Heritage Unit leading. The tree shadows had already covered the tracks, so the vote was to move up the line northward to Hilliard. There was more open ground there between the trees and the tracks, and the side of the train would likely still be lit. We caravanned up US 1 11 miles to the town of Hilliard. It's on the same CSX-A line we left in Callahan, but has a little more room around the tracks, and that would make the late afternoon light a little better. We had waited about 20 minutes when IO 2531 came in on the radio.
CSXT IO 25, that's clear. Downtown Hilliard, southbound track number 1, lead engine CSXT 1871, no defects, below EGM.
We were all rolling when he crossed County Road 108. IO 25 is the daily southbound counterpart to IO 26. He comes out of Bedford Park, Illinois with mostly loaded containers for Florida. I guess he's now carrying loaded auto racks on the head end. Dale Rockwell was right. Hilliard had much better light for this train at this time. I think I should have moved down to the turnout for Duval Yard in Jacksonville to catch that ACL unit. He would have been going very slow moving through there, and I would have had more time for him on video. At Hilliard, with him going 60 miles an hour, he was only on the screen for 2 seconds. Oh well, it was a fun day. I want to shout out to Adrian Gordon of Berkshire, UK for the newest sign on the fence back there. Adrian says this is a signal marker from Darlington Station, hence the DS on it. That is a beautiful sign, Adrian, and I thank you very much for sending it to me all the way across the Atlantic. I love it, so much, much appreciated. Now please hit that like button if you like this video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. It doesn't cost you a nickel to subscribe. Use the comments section below to let me know what you think or any ideas you have about videos that I can do. I read them all and try to reply to as many as I possibly can. I thank you for watching, and I'm really glad you could join me for this trip. And so, let's make plans to meet up again sometime, somewhere out there on the high iron. And until we do, this is Danny Harmon, out.